Bom dia a todos aqui e a ouvir-nos através do live stream. Espero que nos consigam ouvir. Se tivermos algum problema de som e não nos conseguirem ouvir, peço por favor que avisem, só para sabermos. E entretanto, iríamos dar início a esta conferência e nos agrada a todos muito estarmos presentes. E eu passo desde já a palavra à Isabel Ventura.
Muito obrigada, doutora Diana. Olá, muito bom dia. Conseguem ouvir-me? O som está razoável, pelo menos? Sim? Olá, muito bom dia a todas e a todos. Quero, antes de mais, começar por cumprimentar as pessoas que estão na assistência, também cumprimentar as minhas colegas desta mesa, com quem eu partilho este momento, nomeadamente a doutora Rosana Albuquerque, e a doutora Luísa Brito e Cunha, e cumprimentar também as pessoas que nos estão a ver e a ouvir nesta transmissão em direto. Dizer ainda que neste momento estou em representação da coordenação científica do Centro de Investigação do SAMRI, da Universidade Aberta, e que é uma honra e uma enorme oportunidade estarmos a associar-nos e a acolher esta conferência intitulada Frente de Mulheres da Noruega, e é, portanto, com enorme gosto que recebemos aqui nesta sala e hoje para ouvirmos uma das fundadoras da Kvinnefronten, da Noruega, que está agora a fazer os 50 anos, esta organização, bem como a sua atual presidente. A Universidade Aberta tem tido um papel fundamental na produção de conhecimento científico na área dos estudos sobre as mulheres de género e feministas, com a criação do mestrado em estudos sobre as mulheres em 1995, portanto, em breve já faremos 30 anos, e este mesmo mestrado que tem resistido, crescido e acrescentado tanto neste campo científico, tem dado, deu origem e foi reforçando um dinamismo na produção científica de conhecimento nesta área através das investigações produzidas pelas e pelos finalistas deste mestrado. Também foi na sequência deste mesmo mestrado que tivemos o estabelecimento de linhas de investigação nestas áreas dedicadas a estes temas, e atualmente o SAMRI orgulha-se de acolher o grupo de investigação em estudos sobre as mulheres, género, sociedade e cultura, que eu atualmente represento. Este grupo de investigação, os objetivos deste grupo de investigação estão alinhados, portanto, com o tema desta conferência, e por isso é um enorme gosto e um grande privilégio podermos então ter aqui hoje estas duas conferencistas. Eu, da minha parte, considerando que a representação considerando a representação do SAMRI, da minha parte, eu passaria a palavra então às minhas colegas. Rosana?
Ora, bom dia a todas as pessoas que nos estão a ouvir. Good morning. Anieta, estão-me a ouvir bem aí no Zoom? Está toda a gente a ouvir? Façam assim. Ok. Portanto, eu tenho o prazer de receber aqui na Universidade Aberta esta conferência. Queria agradecer à Plataforma Portuguesa para os Direitos das Mulheres por terem organizado esta iniciativa. Agradecer à Frente de Mulheres da Noruega por ter vindo, por fazer esta parceria aqui connosco. Agradecer às minhas colegas de mesa, a colega doutora, ou vou passar os doutores porque se calhar, à Isabel Ventura, do CMRI, da linha de estudos sobre as mulheres, à Luísa, também da plataforma, e à Diana Pinto, da plataforma, e também às pessoas que estão aqui na assistência e estão aí via Zoom connosco, neste caminho. Eu vou tentar fazer isto em mix em inglês e português para as colegas da Noruega também poderem acompanhar. So Universidade Aberta is the first university in Portugal that created a master degree on women's studies or gender studies. There was no anything like that in Portugal in 1995 or 1994, which was the date when the Senate of the Universidade Aberta approved the master. 1994 was just only 20 years after the revolution in Portugal, democracy, freedom, decolonization, and we can say, oh, it was after 20 years, but 20 years is not so much in the life of a country and in the countries to create a master degree on women's studies and women's studies. So it was the boldness and the courage of two women of Universidade Aberta, Maria Rocha Trindade e Maria Laura Betancourt Pires, in memoriam. They had this rivalry and this idea and this dream to create a new scientific field in Portugal, inviting many of the people that created, in fact, the scientific area on women's studies in Portugal. The first class was in 1995. And we have one of the first students here in the room, Teresa Pinto, is one of the first students of the first class on women's studies. Teresa Joaquim, who coordinates the master degree now with me and other colleague, Cristina Pereira Vieira, was one of the teachers, the first teachers of this first class. I think she's on Zoom. If she's not, she will attend on Zoom. And it was really, well, a very vivid, and not only in scientific terms, but also in personal terms, in civic terms, to create this scientific area, to share discussion, and to build, in fact, step by step, a field in Portugal on this scientific area, which is very linked. Women's studies in Portugal and the women, the teachers who created this and who started this and who have walked this long way, almost 30 years now. They have created, in fact, or the step by step, as I said, a scientific field, a research, a public opinion about, a public awareness about women's rights. And there, I think I can say, because I mean, I coordinate the master since almost 15 years now. In 2010, that Teresa Joaquim invited me to coordinate also the master year. And so I'm an outsider. I'm a younger generation. But well, not right now, not so young. I'm just feel a bit older now. But I see this path of women's studies in Portugal as very with a strong link between universities, civic activism, political lobbying, the promotion of political rights and social rights of women's studies. So there is, I think, a really strong link between academia and civil society, I think. And these links that fuel each other and create really what we have now in Portugal, almost 30 years after the first degree, several courses, university courses, PhDs, masters, post-graduations, and all very public awareness about gender equality, about women rights, the rights of women and girls. With the diversity along this path about different agendas and different generations, different expectations, and different concepts. Regarding the Master on Women's Studies, we have this e-learning model since 2010. The first one was face-to-face, was a traditional learning with people with classes from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. every day. So people work in the area and they study in the evening. Today, since 2010, we have this full e-learning model. And it's a pleasure and it's a privilege to welcome very different people from different countries, from the south and the south and north, the east, the west. Yesterday we have the welcome session to the students of this schooling year, a class of 20 people, some of Portugal in the north, in the islands, in the south of Portugal, and some of them in Brazil, so Brazilian students, some of them in Africa, like Angola, Mozambique, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, and São Tomé, which were the five countries who were former colonies of Portugal. And this is really a very rich experience to welcome such diversity in the class. And it's also a challenge for the teachers to be attentive, to be aware of this diversity, and for us to create a common ground to discuss, like the concept of gender, politics, North-South relations. What is the conception of gender of areas? The conception of gender is equal from us in Portugal or in Norway, like in the inner Mozambique or inner Cape Verde or inner Guinea-Bissau. The tradition, the modernity, the challenges that every day people who have a role in the field. There is a great complexity. We don't have answers, clear answers. We have a discussion going on, and it's very interesting for us to try to create a common ground of discussion, of experiences, with this richness of the diversity in the class. So our students are an inspiration for us. And they are people who intervene in the field, in the women's rights, in NGOs, in politics, and so they have these great strong roots in the field, and at the same time they have this. It's a common sharing. Yesterday some of them said that we have this dream. We have a dream. We have a dream. We are here to study. We are here to learn. It's not just a diploma. We don't want just a diploma. Women's studies is not just a diploma. It's a way of living. It's a way of staying in society. And I want to change my microspace, my community, my country, my women. And so we have this dream, all this diversity of dreams in the class, and so it's very, very, very interesting, and it's very, very challenging. I'm see Teresa Pinto, who is one of the teachers. It's really defying, but very, very a marvelous experience, in fact. Just to conclude, just to say, in 1994, when the Senate created this, of course, there was some laughing about women's studies. And still nowadays, we sometimes receive some laughings. Oh, you are going to study women. What are you going to study on women's studies? But it's interesting to see that Universidade Aberta, in spite of those laughing, created this, and they opened a space of risk to experiment, to try something new, and to somehow create a promise of future. So we are always looking for the future. And recently we celebrated the 25th anniversary, and now we are coming to the 30th anniversary, and we are always looking, we are always trying with this concern about linking the past, the present, to build the future. So linking the past, the names of people who came to the master, who came across the master, who are now in the other universities, creating another master's, creating another PhDs, creating another research centers, the present, which is this great diversity in the class, so many people from Africa and from Europe to have a discussion on gender and equality, on human rights, and on political intervention in the field, civic intervention, to change the day-to-day our lives, but always looking to the future. What is the future that we want to build? What is this common future that we want to build, in spite and because of this diversity? Yeah. So many names. We in the celebrations we tried to name the names of the people who came across the master, but now I wanted to finish to say just one name, because in the master it's something I really appreciate. Our students become mothers and they are babies, and we have lots of babies that I call them the master babies, mem babies. So they have and some of them were with in the mother's lap while they were in the Zoom session, and I really find that very, very interesting. So Vicente, I name one, the last baby, or the most recent baby of the master, Vicente, 1 month, is in Brazil. With the mother is a Brazilian student. So Vicente is a symbol of the society we want to build. So the future for Vicente, which is a little boy, a little baby, for boys, for girls, for women, to create, really to try to create and to build and to reinforce this common space, a safe common space, in spite of all the chaos that we are living in spite of all the problems that still persist, in spite of all the inequalities that still are being reproducing. Thank you. There's this common space that I think women's studies, the first idea of the women's studies, of people who created women's studies in Portugal, and it's still this idea of future, to build a common safe space for us in a world that is our common home. So thank you, and we can discuss after if you want. Thank you. Obrigada, bom dia.
Muito bom dia. Muito bom dia. Eu sou Luísa Maria Frente Cunha, que pertenço, para já quero agradecer a este painel, à Isabel Ventura e à Rosana Albuquerque, por nos ter recebido na vossa linda casa e ter-nos proporcionado esta conferência, não só presencial como online. Para nós é muito importante. Eu sou de uma organização que são as Sorotimistas. Esta organização faz parte da PPDM, que tem 29 organizações. Portanto, nós somos uma das organizações desta organização, que é a grande PPDM. Nós vamos fazer mesmo um verdadeiro mix. Portanto, a Diana irá começar a traduzir algumas coisas que eu direi. Portanto, estendo as nossas calorosas boas-vindas e agradecimentos da parte da PPDM a todos os presentes que tiveram a gentileza em compartilhar connosco este momento tão especial e acreditar que também estão aqui porque querem conhecer um pouco mais da história, da atividade e do exemplo do ativismo feministas das mulheres da Noruega.
So it is a pleasure to share this opening table with you all. I extend the warm welcome of the Portuguese Platform for Women's Rights, PPDM, to all those who accompany us here in this space, which was so kindly provided by Aberta University, which welcomes us so well, and also obviously online for the live stream in this event that hopes to share and celebrate the activism of the Norwegian Women's Front, Kvinnfronten.
A PPDM é a maior organização da sociedade civil em Portugal na área dos direitos humanos das mulheres e da igualdade entre mulheres e homens, reunindo 29 organizações membros muito diferentes entre si, mas todas elas empenhadas numa intervenção cívica concentrada pela defesa e salvaguarda dos direitos humanos das mulheres e das raparigas e pela realização, de facto, da igualdade entre mulheres e homens.
So PPDM is the largest civil society organization in Portugal in the area of women's human rights and equality between women and men, bringing together 29 member organizations, very different from each other, but all of them committed to a concerted civic intervention for the defense and safeguarding of the human rights of women and girls and the achievement of the de facto equality between women and men.
Somos uma organização com estatuto consultivo nas Nações Unidas, no Conselho Económico e Social. Somos a coordenação em Portugal da maior associação de mulheres da União Europeia, o Lobby Europeu das Mulheres, e são mais de 2.000 associações de mulheres em toda a Europa. Já este ano, em 2023, pela segunda vez na história do movimento feminista, a PPDM tornou-se no Conselho Nacional de Portugal, no Conselho Internacional das Mulheres. Depois de 76 anos sem representação de Portugal na organização.
We are an organization with consultative status at the United Nations, at the Economic and Social Council. We are the coordination in Portugal of the largest women's association in the European Union, the European Women's Lobby, with more than 2,000 women's associations across Europe. This year, PPDM became the National Council of Portugal of the International Council of Women for the second time in the history of the Portuguese feminist movement, after 76 years without Portuguese representation in the organization.
Foi a Maria Lamas que foi uma das suas maiores e famosas presidentes e militantes neste Conselho Nacional.
Maria Lamas has been one of its presidents and one of its most famous ones.
Somos ainda membros da plataforma da Sociedade Civil Europeia contra o tráfico de seres humanos. Tudo isto nos poderá dar pistas sobre o nosso envolvimento e comprometimento com, entre tantas outras, a luta pelo fim da exploração sexual de mulheres e raparigas.
We are also members of the European Civil Society Platform Against Human Trafficking, which should also give us all some clues about our involvement and commitment to the fight against the sexual exploitation of women and girls.
O projeto que nos reúne aqui é, aliás, a continuação de um trabalho de parceria que foi indicado justamente com o projeto Exit. Os direitos humanos das mulheres a não serem prostituídas, igualmente financiado pelo programa Cidadãos Ativos, um financiamento proveniente da Islândia, Liechtenstein e Noruega, através do Active Citizens Grantes em Portugal, gerido pelo consórcio Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian e Fundação Bissaia Barreto. Este é também o programa financiador do projeto, do qual se insere este evento, o Tribuna Feminista. Convocar compromissos, integrar direitos e assegurar o diálogo civil estruturado. E neste temos o gosto de ter como parceiros novamente a Frente de Mulheres da Noruega. Surge, portanto, em continuação de uma cooperação que foi para nós certamente de maior sucesso.
The project that brings us together here today is in fact a continuation of a partnership that began precisely with the previous project called Exit, Human Rights of Women Not to be Prostituted, also financed by the Active Citizens Program, funding from Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway for the Active Citizens Fund EE grants. In Portugal, which is managed by the consortium Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian and Fundação Bissaia Barreto. This is also the funding program for the project of which this event is part of, so the Feminist Tribune, and in which we are very pleased to have as partners once again the Norwegian Women's Front, Kvinnfronten. And so it arises as a continuation of a cooperation that was for us certainly a very successful one.
Esta cooperação reflete-se também na continuidade dos objetivos e linhas políticas de ambos os projetos. O Tribuna Feminista pretende convocar para a prática dos compromissos internacionais, regionais e europeus em matéria de direitos humanos das mulheres e das raparigas, designadamente através da implementação de recomendações concretas. São elas: procurar aferir em que medida a igualdade entre as mulheres e homens é implementada, designadamente através da orçamentação sensível ao género, e nos instrumentos de política que estruturam a década em Portugal. E ainda procura reforçar o diálogo civil estruturado entre as associações de mulheres, em particular através da PPDM, o Parlamento e o Governo.
This cooperation is also reflected in the continuity of the objectives and political guidelines of both projects. The Feminist Tribune intends to put international, regional, and European commitments on the human rights of women and girls into practice, namely through the implementation of concrete recommendations. It seeks to access the extent to which equality between women and men is implemented, namely through gender-sensitive budgeting, and the policy instruments that structure this decade in Portugal, and also seeks to reinforce structured civil dialogue between women's associations, in particularly through PPDM, the Parliament, and the government.
Concebido com base em processos imbuídos de uma cidadania ativa e participativa, o Tribuna Feminista incorporou diferentes atividades, das quais resultaram 4 publicações. A este propósito, aliás, estendo já o convite para que nos acompanhem online amanhã, através do canal do YouTube da PPDM, no seminário final do projeto Direitos Humanos das Mulheres no Centro da Democracia, que será a partir das 14h30.
Designed based on processes imbued with active and participatory citizenship, the project Feminist Tribune incorporated different activities, of which resulted 4 publications. In this regard, I take this opportunity to extend to everyone an invitation to follow us online tomorrow through the platform's YouTube channel at the project's final seminar, Women's Human Rights at the Center of Democracy, at 2:30 p.m.
Foi justamente a propósito deste seminário que estamos cá hoje, na companhia das 2 dirigentes da organização Frente, Mulheres da Noruega, numa oportunidade única para ouvir e refletir sobre a história e a experiência de uma das mais antigas organizações feministas do país. A propósito da sua visita a Lisboa, promovemos este evento, reconhecendo o papel fundamental que a Frente de Mulheres da Noruega desempenhou na adoção do modelo de igualdade no país e na sua contínua monitorização.
It was precisely because of this seminar that we are here today, in the company of 2 leaders from the Norwegian Women's Front, in a unique opportunity to listen and to reflect on the history and experience of one of the oldest feminist organizations in the country. Because of their visit to Lisbon, we promoted this event, recognizing the fundamental role that the Norwegian Women's Front played in the adoption of the equality model in Norway and its continuing monitoring. Over the last 30 years, feminist abolitionist activists has taken up a considerable share of its activities.
Ao longo dos últimos 30 anos, o ativismo feminista abolicionista tem ocupado consideravelmente a sua atividade num exemplo inspirador para organizações feministas em todo o mundo, com as quais a Frente de Mulheres da Noruega mantém relações de cooperação regulares, do qual o projeto Exit é o exemplo. Mas não só sobre isso debruçam a organização. Combate há 50 anos e sem sinais de abrandar todas as formas de opressão, exploração e violência nos domínios económico, social, político, legal e cultural, a que estão sujeitas as mulheres e as raparigas numa sociedade sexista e dominada pelos homens.
Over the last 30 years, feminist abolitionist activism has taken up a considerable share of its activities, and an inspiring example for feminist organizations around the world with which the Norwegian Women's Front maintains regular cooperative relations, and of which, of course, the Exit Project is an example of. But this is not all they focus on. The organization has been fighting for 50 years and with no sign of slowing down all forms of oppression, exploitation, and violence in the economic, social, political, legal, and cultural domains, to which women and girls are subject to in a sexist and male-dominated society.
É por isso que cá estamos, neste espaço que é para nós tão importante. As sinergias entre o trabalho produzido pelas organizações de mulheres e a academia são da maior mais-valia para os nossos objetivos comuns e refletem-se em eventos como este e em projetos como o de Viva Voz 2, cujos produtos vos convido a conferir desde já no canal do YouTube e no Spotify da PPDM. Esta é também a memória histórica do movimento feminista e das mulheres que o compõem, que nos propomos a proteger e disseminar, afinal, a longevidade da Frente de Mulheres da Noruega. É, em si mesma, um feito de admirável resistência e persistência na defesa dos direitos humanos de todas as mulheres. A sua intervenção política ao longo de 5 décadas e a sua capacidade de adaptação a um modo de constante mudança demonstram não só a atualidade do movimento feminista da segunda vaga, mas também a contemporaneidade de muitos dos desafios que travamos no passado.
That's why we are here today, in this space that is so important to us. The synergies between the work produced by women's organizations and academia are of the greatest added value for common objectives and are reflected in events like this one and in projects such as the Viva Voz 2, whose products I invite you to check out on the platform's YouTube and Spotify channel. This is also the historical memory of the feminist movement and the women who make it that we propose to protect and disseminate. After all, the longevity of the Norwegian Women's Front is in itself a feat of admirable resistance and persistence in defending the human rights of all women. Its political intervention over 5 decades and its ability to adapt to a constantly changing world demonstrate not only the relevance of the second wave feminist movement and thought, but also the contemporary nature of many of the challenges we face in the past.
Estou certa de que esta será uma manhã de partilha e reflexão coletiva, de grande valor para todas as presentes. E talvez encontremos uma forma para darmos o nosso pequeno grito, o nosso basta e repúdio a todas as formas de violência e desigualdade extremas que não conhecem fronteiras nem estratos sociais. Muito obrigada.
I'm quite sure that this will be a moment of sharing and collective reflection of great added value for everyone present, and perhaps this will also be an opportunity for us to scream that we are unhappy and unwilling to continue to live in a world that treats women and men differently. Thank you. Se ninguém tiver nenhuma questão ou comentário, poderemos passar ao segundo momento. Aqui também no live stream penso que ninguém tem ponto. Assim sendo, eu passaria então à mesa redonda. Obrigada. So this was thought to be a little bit more of an informal conversation among the 3 of us. Hopefully we'll get to discuss a little bit about Kvinnfronten, which is the organization that Agnete and Hild are a part of and which brings us all here today. In that regard, I'll just read a very short paragraph about the organizations, and then we can discuss if I'm missing something important. So Kvinnfronten, or the Women's Front, is an independent women's organization in Norway, founded in 1972. It is a radical feminist organization working against all forms of oppression experienced by women and girls in a society dominated by men: economical, social, political, legal, and cultural oppression. In the early 1970s, the Women's Front worked primarily for women's economic independence, and since then it has worked for the right to legal, safe, and free abortion, against the commodification of women's bodies and sexuality, in particularly against the porn industry and the prostitution system. This work is done in close cooperations with other organizations and also with workers' unions. So, Agnete, yes. I'll direct you my first question. As a funding member of Kvinnfronten, is there anything you'd like to add to what I said? And how would you describe the experience of funding the organization? Why did you decide to be a part of it? And what were your biggest obstacles at the time? So a very broad, big question.
Okay, happy to be here. And I will use the chance to say that we are very impressed by the work that the Plataforma de Mulheres Portugues that you are doing. We can learn a lot from you. Just looking through the map that you gave us with all the information today, I'm a little bit envious. Okay, why did I take part in funding the organization, and why did the other women decided to do it? You have to remember that it was founded in 1972, and we had impulses from the US feminism, the international feminism. So we didn't dig up this idea on our own. We got all these feminist analyses about the society and the women's situation, and we studied, each of us. But the other very important thing is that you have to remember young women I would say that most of us were studying or had a 3-year study or even went to the university for a full study. We were young women, and we discovered all the obstacles. I mean, you talked about dreams. We had dreams, but then came the obstacles, and we saw that this was unjust. I mean, young people are very great in saying, this is not justice, this is unfair, this is unfair. Like children, this is unfair. Why should you have more than me? You know you're a man.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be the analogy. Yes.
So, as you said, as a young woman, some of us experienced no legal right to abortion. Horrendous experience, horrendous. If you had, then you had the kids that you wanted. No kindergarten. Only 3% of the kids needing kindergarten, or the women needing kindergarten. There were 3% places. Now we have nearly 100%. So, you know, I'm going to work, I'm going to study. What about this kid, or the kids in plural? Right. So that was one of the most important starting point, kindergartens, for us to have the time to study, to work. And then working, no equal pay. The man there, he has 3 years of education. I have 3 years of education. I have nearly half his pay. Even if, I mean, we're talking about equal pay, even if it isn't the same job, okay? An engineer contra a nurse. That is a very heavy discussion, which still is going on. So it was, to sum up, we saw that this is economical, social, political, legal, cultural, oppression, and class and race.
Yes.
But we didn't grasp it at the same time. No. But that is what we experienced on the way, and that we took in every topic as it came on. But instead of being alone facing all these obstacles, we started to talk. I think we had a great experience by starting to when we were studying, when we wanted to have an education, and also we started to talk, we started to speak out. So we have a coffee with you, and I am telling you how I feel.
Yeah.
And you have the same experience. And you're silent, but in the end you you come on. And then we experienced that we are in fact not alone. And that made the oppression being a little bit less a burden, because we wanted to do something. We wanted to be together. We wanted to kick out, to march, protest. I mean, and that is, I felt like a liberation. Instead of having this burden of oppression, it was liberation. And we were, and we had, and that was something that we were able to pass on to others in the society. This is fun, come on. And also we had the strength, the urge to reach out to the whole globe, the whole world was something that we wanted to explore as women. And we reached out to women in other countries that were struggling with internal war, fighting against the dictatorship. And we were, it wasn't so difficult to travel those days. So we took part, or we visited Eritrea, Palestine, Latin America, what more? The Philippines. Oh yes, the Philippines were very close. And also when the liberation of East Timor came, yeah. And but it was a very hot case in my hometown, Bergen, because we had in fact the the foreign minister in exile living in Bergen. Yeah. So that is how we get connected to the other world.
So you would say that women talking to each other about their own lived experience is the first step
Yes.
to liberation.
Yeah.
Finding
that
the
is really
space.
yeah. I mean, you are. Yeah, it is obstacles, and instead of going to bed and take and be quiet, we
Yes.
have the chance to talk to others one by one, I would say.
Yes.
Mm.
So maybe not so much has changed since the 70s, because for me personally, the experience of going into university and talk to other women has really been the starting point also for my feminist awakening.
Yeah.
So I feel some things stay the same.
But we were not all. I was a working woman when I started. I was a working woman with two children, and I had left I had my university education, but I didn't continue with that as a job. I went to ordinary kommunearbeid.
Community service.
Yeah, community service.
Yes,
Yeah.
like
I were
community
among
help.
less fortunate women than my study, my friends at the university. But I worked together with Hilde's mother. And what sort of upbringing did she have?
What kind of upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, she didn't have what 3 years education.
Yeah.
Yes.
For her, the most important part was that her father was running the family. It was a true patriarchy in the family, within the family. And from a very early age, she saw that she was treated differently.
Yeah.
She was an exceptional running talent.
Yeah.
But her father didn't think she needed running shoes. So she went to this huge game for kids, and she was running barefoot.
Wow.
And she won the race. And she's still thinking, what could I have been if I just got running shoes from my father? And this was, she was born in 52. And she always told me when I was like 13, 14, that she had all these dreams, and it was a boy in school that said, you're not going to achieve any of your dreams. Just look around you. Who's running the world? And when you looked around in the 60s and the 70s, it was all run by men. So you had no role models. So that was a very important drive for her. She wanted to do things. She wanted to, and for her, it was very liberating to meet women in the Women's Front who shared the same experience. And, connecting with people is the key to organizing. Right. And when you organize, you can achieve things.
My family, I didn't have that experience at home in the family. My father, we have 3 sisters. My father said, the most important thing is work. And that was that is liberating. It was not love, it was work. But when I started working, then I had the obstacles, okay?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I really I find it very interesting what you said about places for babies.
Mm.
So the lack of support from the states for schooling, because I feel like that comes back again and again as a very specific demand of the 70s feminist movement. So really to fight the sexual division of labor and to fight the domestic staying at home, taking care of your kids, and how that really limits our freedom. So it's very interesting that, again, so many of these organizations that sprung in the 70s kind of had very similar programs, because we faced, in a lot of ways, similar challenges. So on another little note, different note that we talked about in the previous panel, Frente has obviously been very tireless since its funding in the struggle for feminist abolitionism of the prostitution system. In fact, you've played quite a fundamental role in the adoption of the equality model in Norway, and you've been continually monitoring this process. So I was just wondering, how do you evaluate that, the process, that the path that has been made, and what are the biggest lessons, both that you've learned from it, and also what are the biggest obstacles now? And this is for both of you, obviously.
I would like to underline once again that we in Women's Front, none of us have been born with a full agenda of what is important to fight for. We have had misconception, we have misunderstood, it has been a learning, it has been a continuous education where we had to talk to each other and to sort out what is this. And when it comes to the work against prostitution, I would say that prostituted women were not looked on as truly human beings. Could never been. We inherited that notion from the generation before, the labor from the social democrats and the social that they were sort of lumpenproletariat. That means that they cannot be you cannot trust them. Like you cannot trust a drug addict because he will go away. And that same notion were put upon prostituted persons. So you say they were not seen as human beings. And actually, the fact-based, they were not entitled to welfare legal rights. I mean, no one reached out in Norway. I would say that both the predators and the society, I mean, those in charge of the society, regarded the prostituted woman, for example, as a commodity to be. She will not last long. She can be used. It was not on the top agenda of the social welfare. Can we say so? And for us, she was the other, and not a sister. That was what we had to battle with. And we should not feel ashamed about that we had this opinion or these feelings, because it has been implanted in us. But we had to overcome it and say that she is a sister. And if you look upon the fact that during this time, I would say that our leaders in the feminist movement will more and more be the survivors. So that and in saying that, I would say that as not all survivors can be leaders, but those of them who struggle to be leaders, they have overcome so much, they have learned so much, and they're capable of analyzing in a way that yes, they are the leaders in this battle. And yeah, okay, that is how it started, and then jump to where it will end. And you said obstacles. Perhaps we can talk about obstacles. Yes. If you look at the situation now, then we said it's patriarchy, and we will say that today also, it's patriarchy, but that is only sort of an empty title. You can put whatever you want into the head. You have to specialize it. We can. I think we have had. I'm giving talks to audiences, to members in Norway about men's sexual violence against women in war and peace, and that is rape. And then you can sort of how to say, present those men for the audience, because it's not all men, but those men who are raping in War and Peace, and then you can say this man is also buying women. Yeah. And you have, why do we regard the buying of women different than rape in War and Peace? So the thing, I had just come from a conference in Stockholm that was on Tuesday, yes, which talked about pornography and prostitution. And I will give you, I will say that I will read from the first paragraph here. I will give you the address to this also. Resume, resume. Wait, give me a second. Resume. Summary. Yeah, it was summary. Yeah, in this report, we present research that pornography cannot be separated from prostitution or trafficking. And then we base our conclusion on research on so many persons. We describe here the parallels between prostitution, pornography production, and trafficking with respect to method of recruitment, racism, economic inequality, sex inequality, specific harms perpetrated by pimps and by sex buyers, coercion, blah, 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 blah. The thing is, in Norway, buying sex is illegal. Looking at pornography is legal. But pornography is filmed prostitution. So we have now to see that we are up against this industry. This pornography is legal, and we have to make it illegal. If not, we will never end prostitution.
So I feel like the way we deal with pornography is the next step.
It is.
After the Nordic model is where we have to start working now.
Yeah, if you want to have the Nordic model, you have to see that pornography is the one who will overrun us if we don't fight against it. And you can reach this report that was put on internet 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago, by prostitution research, in one word, prostitutionresearch.com. Then it comes up. Enjoy. Okay, där du din andra obstacle.
Yeah, and that's of course a big obstacle with prostitution.
Yeah.
So as you know, I even find it hard to put in school in Norway. Little kids have iPads, and I've been in this board meeting with parents at school, and it's even very hard to put on a filter on those iPads for the kids not to have pornography on their school iPads. And we're talking about kids around 7 and 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's ever younger, right?
Yes, it's younger and younger. And I think one of the main obstacles is that we, the parents, we are a generation who grew up with totally different pornography. We grew up, in my upbringing, we had like magazines in a shelf in some shady store. But now it's everywhere, and the access is very easy. And what you see is filled with violence and racism and oppression. And what you see is not always what you think you see. It could be minors, it could be trafficking, of course, and rape.
It really has an impact, right, on young people and how they perceive their sexuality and how they grow also to see gender relationships. Because if you've only looked at women being beaten and humiliated through pornography as a young boy, what does that tell you? What kind of input are you getting? And obviously as a young girl, of your own value in the world.
And also we to maintain things you have is a constant
struggle. Yes.
So we have the Nordic model or the Sex Purchase Act, but we have to defend it all the time. And we have this year a petition signed by numerous international organizations to urge the Norwegian government to keep the abolitionist equality model, which is being challenged by the sex trade lobby. And that is a constant challenge. They try different angles, and we have to take another step all the time.
Yes, I just want to go back to pornography because we have so often during the decades said that pornography has an impact on young people and also later on that is men are sort of asking their partners or to react what they have seen in pornography, and when pornography is violent, okay, that they bring the violence into their own sexuality. But psychologists have never come forward saying that yes, there are a link here, violent pornography, how you act out your own sexuality.
So there isn't a casuality relation that's proven.
It's like they say that there are no connections.
Right.
You can look at pornography and you will not be affected and change your mind and crave similar things. Until also 2 days ago, in the news, there was a young a prison attendant who spoke out, saying that in our prison nowadays we have many more young prisoners that are convicted for sexual violence, and I think it's due to pornography. And she said that now there are 27% of the convicted yes, that have been charged with sexual
violence in different forms.
Yes,
rape.
And she is the first. We have to start. Now we can start discussing it. Now we can start asking, can we let this go on? Shall we sort of let the young people end up in prison? And those who they harm, shall they be left with traumas for the rest of their life? So I think that pornography might be on our agenda by this woman who spoke out.
Yeah. And we often talk about, obviously, the violence, the almost symbolic violence that pornography represents, which I would argue it's not necessarily symbolic, but so the effect on the people, on the viewer, but also the very real violence in the movies of the people who are in those movies, of the women who, and often girls who are also very much there.
That is what this is about.
Right.
Yeah.
And in every case, that's what the police says. If you follow every case in the justice courts, if there's been a rape or overgrep, when you sexually abuse,
sexual abuse,
there's they have always been filmed, and the film has always ended up on a porn site.
Yeah.
So the swings are harder and harder to separate.
And
Yes, and also it's like a re-traumatizing for the
Yes.
victims, because it's not only this happened once, people can watch you over and over again. And a lot of them talk about just, you know, walking around in society knowing that people just watched your trauma just for fun. It's
There's something here.
yeah, I can hear
Okay.
myself.
Let me see. Try now. I think it should be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Please continue. Technology is always a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was just wondering, obviously, and I feel like this is important to go here because Frente is such an older organization, and I would say it's one of the few second wave feminist big organizations that sprung up in the 70s that has actually lasted all these years and hasn't eventually diluted into something else or just disappeared. That even if in the 70s you could really you kind of had this sort of, you never really have a consensus, obviously, with the social movement because you always have different thought currents, obviously, but there was quite of a consensus on the feminist analysis on prostitution and pornography, big movements against pornography. Obviously, at the time, there were stores, so it was easier to target. There's definitely a very fractured perspective on what we would say sexual exploitation. So both on the prostitution system, also as pornography, and there's a current of thought within the feminist movement that would argue that that can be emancipatory, that can be liberating, that could fit within the sexual liberation agenda. So is that struggle within the feminist movement present in Norway as well? And does that make it harder to defend the Nordic model?
Although I wouldn't call it the feminist movement.
Right.
But in a broad way, it is. But yeah, I really struggle with that talk of empowerment, because
Which is a big buzzword. Right?
yeah,
Empowerment.
it is, because you know what I wanted with the women's to join the women's organizations was to do something for women, not only for myself,
right?
You know, and that's a huge difference, because if I talk about them as the other feminists, they're talking about letting individuals empower themselves
for their choices.
But it's not, what kind of empowerment is it, and what do they achieve? Because it's not liberating, it's not a huge economical advantage. So what kind of empowerment is it? You don't get to, you don't, let me rephrase, it's, if you look at women in prostitution, you have the stigma, you have no money when you leave, and you can also look at, you know, in all kinds of work, the older you get, the more experienced you get, the more pay you get. But in prostitution, it's the opposite.
Right.
The more experience you get, the older you get, the less money you get paid. And that's not empowering in time. It's just diminishing. So I really don't get that argument. I think it's a very hollow, and yeah.
I think it is a wrong way of the word empowerment actually means something else than the individual. empowerment to change something. I mean, empowerment is to educate yourself and your friends, and then we really feel strong enough to do something together. That is empowerment, not individual empowerment. But our words are co-opted nowadays.
Yeah.
For example, work. But the sex industry call it work. We who are working women in trade unions, we know what work is.
Yeah.
So they are sort of. So I will not use empowerment but we will take part in the discussion. But I will not. I will put forward that we have a common cause and we have an obligation to do something with what is wrong in the world.
I really like that idea that you mentioned about the collective struggle. So the women's movement is being not only me doing things that will affect positively my life. And I think a lot of feminists within the Black movement have for decades trying to pass on that message as well, as being a necessity of women as, if you want to call it a class, but definitely a group, a collective of really moving forward our conditions for everyone.
And it's very important to remember that we are half the population. We are not a minority. We are half the
as we
population.
are often described.
Yes. It's
women and minorities.
Yes, we are put in a box with all kinds of minorities, but we are not a minority. We are half the world. And that's very important for all women to remember.
And it also means, obviously, that the system of oppression it's different for women.
Yes.
Because we don't have the same dynamics that minorities have, which is not a hierarchical trying to see what matters more, but it's definitely important for an analysis so that we can have a
we
program.
are put in a box that has to do with, disabilities, race, climate. It's like some checkbox, and then equality, and it doesn't really make sense. And I often get the question, why is equality so important? Well, because it's half the population. We are not 2%.
As the situation is unfair, and to make it not unfair, we need equality. It's to bridge up the gap.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. So I was going to question this last, but we've already kind of touched upon it. But would you then say that the second wave feminist thought, let's put it like that, it's quite unpopular at the moment? Would you agree with that? Or would you say it's still obviously important as you follow a lot of its thoughts, but also would you say it still has a place?
We discussed it yesterday, and I think there are two things I want to say. At first, I want to say what Agneta said, that when other organizations that you disagree with co-opt your words, you have achieved something. So when they start saying my body, my choice in different ways, okay, this is very powerful. That's why they use it. That's one thing. The other thing is, I don't really believe it's very unpopular, but because it's fundamental rights, but in a way, some person has individualized a lot of the fight, but you can see it when we had the right-wing government and they tried to change the wordings in the legislation for abortions. Then there was an uprising with a lot of women fighting for the law. So I think maybe a lot of them takes our rights and our laws, the legislation for granted. But so it's only, I think it's only a question of information, because when you talk to people, they mainly agree.
And we're definitely not in the post-feminist world, as
No,
people would.
No.
And abortion, very clearly, we
Yeah,
keep seeing the backlash all
you
across the
need
board,
to-
really.
Yeah, and you need to connect things, you know. You can't view this, that economic rights for women is not like a separate part
Of
from
course.
abortion rights, or
But it all stems from the
Yes.
same basis of
Yeah.
the appropriation of our reproductive capacities
Yes.
and then divided
Yeah.
labor.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Agnes?
We
you
have
thinking
young
something?
members in the Women's Front.
Yes, I've
The
met
board of Women's Front is the average age 30s, which I would call young. And
Yes.
so you are talking about a generation that are in a way divided, but not in majority. I mean, so it is up to to communicate and hopefully we will be strong enough to that our victories will not be taken away from us. But as Hilde said, when they tried to touch the abortion law, everyone put the boots on and marched. So I think that will happen with that postmodern wave also, that when someone try to touch the rights that for women that takes as granted, then there will be an ally, even if we don't agree on their ideology at the moment, because it's sort of, as Hilde said, it's pulverized, put us as individual and not as a court. Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you. So obviously we are here at the university. So I believe this question to be quite inescapable. What is the connection? And we've mentioned it a bit in the opening section between the feminist movement, obviously particularly women's organizations, and academia. So what is the influence that it has on your work? What are there tensions? Is it easy for you to establish cooperation back in Norway between the universities and the feminist academic thought? And how can we encourage a more cooperative work between both these sectors that really allows us to work towards our common goal?
Okay, if we go back to when we started, there were women were sort of entering the university as teachers also, much more for the first time as a teacher at the university, not only as students.
In the 70s.
Yeah, yes, and 80s and so on. And I would say that the academia have always had been there, and we are here. But we were completely dependent on the research that they did. You know, without there were, I think it's 10 volumes of research describing this women's situation. All those economically kindergarten, who was washing the floor, who read the paper at home, the double burden, workload, etc., etc. We got facts and figures from academia, and they have been with us for a long time with their research. We don't have to say, no, we want that you should join us, comrade in arms. So we don't need that, because they are feminists. They don't have to be member of our organization. Let's say, so, but there have been less interesting studies at the moment.
That's one way to say it.
No, that was a sort of ironic comment. But Hilde, we are a reading movement. Yeah. And what are we reading at the moment? Prostitution and pornography.
Yeah. It's not much.
We have the facts.
Yeah, on that topic, it's not very much coming from Norway. That is the ideology like we are thinking. It's quite the opposite in a way. But there are other research on violence, and just continue para NKVTS, like that. On violence and harassment in workplaces.
Yeah. Yes, that is research.
And rape. And during the pandemic, there was a kind of a shift. When people stay at home, it's more violence.
Right.
Violence against women, and also more violence against children. Sorry.
Sorry.
What is interesting now is that I would say that I had before it was criminology department where really sort of they were members of Women's Front, or we were there in a way, but that wasn't, we didn't make a thing out of that. But that department is not on our side any longer. That but what I find interesting is the history department. They are digging up facts and figures about women in former days, who really were astonishing persons, leaders, etc. For example, the art museum are going into the archives, and up comes female painters that are as good as the male. That is what is interesting at the moment.
Yes. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Even a lot of the things that also I've been reading have come with a lot of archaeological work about women in pre-class society times. And what does that tell us about, what Gerda Lerner wrote, what Engels wrote in the past, of how our collective oppression began, and how does that change our perspectives? So I think history really has a lot to tell us, even as we build a program for liberation.
So instead of having one very good female painter hanging in the National Museum, oh gosh, 10.
Right.
Hope they will be hanging there forever, and there are more. Now, the notion that there's also some very few iconic figures in all discipline isn't true. It isn't true. If they start to dig and to study, there are it's a movement there too. They were,
it's just a side note. I just remember in high school we were reading about the Viking era, and it was like 70 pages about Vikings doing this, doing that, and then in the end there was this little paragraph saying women in the Viking era, and I was like, okay, so they were not a part of this 70-page.
Right.
Where were they?
The fact is that if the women hadn't been weaving, spinning and weaving those sails for the Viking ship, the Vikings would have been still living in Norway. They couldn't. I mean, without the women's handicraft or hard work, they hadn't been moving 1 meter at all.
Yes.
But even that didn't say.
No. It was like,
but that was one sentence.
Yeah, and the sentence was, and it was not only the Viking era. It was like in the 17th century, the 18th century, and then when the industrial change came, it was like, oh, now women started to work, and I was like, wow. They've always been working,
Exactly.
So we had a short period of time with the women's staying at home, and it was between 45 and 70s when
my mother had to leave her work when she married. That was before the Second World War in 1935. And that was a law that the Social Democrats pushed on, because the man's wage should be enough to support the family. And if the woman also were working, his wage will not be could be lowered, lower.
yeah.
Yeah. So she has to leave her workplace, and I think that was the same in all of in all the Nordic
Yeah.
countries. But it was the social democrats in
Yeah.
governing who did that. So she had to wait when yeah, I would say 30 years before she could start again.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Oh yes,
Yes.
yeah.
My grandmother stayed at home, and that was very important for my mother. She was not a very caring person. And my mom and our theory is that she hated being a staying at home mom. She hated it. She wanted to work, but she had to stay at home. So she was resentful of everything and everyone. But the only thing she always said to my mom was, you have to have an education and you have to work. And that she was just saying it over and over and over again. And she was very happy when I started in university.
I would say that it is a great learning piece to start to think about your generation back. Did your grandmother work? She was at home the whole time. If she was a farmer's wife, she perhaps collected egg and sold it to have her own money. I mean, the concept, women has been working the whole time and struggling. And that is also something my generation had been obliged to learn. What is work?
Yeah.
Right.
What is work?
Because both my grandmothers worked in the fields,
Yes.
as did both my grandparents. But that wasn't really, that's what you did, right? So my granddad, he would like sell the vegetables that they would make, and my grandma would work with him, but she would stay home to cook them.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So she would be thought of as someone who didn't work,
Yeah.
but they did it together.
Yeah.
And yeah, for women, for lower class women and working class women, not working, like you said, was never really a thing. Women have always worked in one way or another.
Yes.
Mostly in what we would say informal economies, but definitely, but it was definitely certainly labor.
Yeah.
On top of the domestic childbearing labor
yeah.
that we've mentioned.
When you have 10 kids, I would just see that as labor.
Which is, of course, one of the big pillars of feminist thought, right?
Yeah.
The idea that reproductive labor is labor, and then we can discuss what is what comes after that, if it's socialization, if it's wages, whatever it be. Then
one of the legal battles that we have had with great support of the lawyers at the university did that part, that when a couple divorced, he had been working, she had been staying at home. How do we divide?
Right.
He had signed on the deeds for the house, the car, everything. And that when we got those court cases where, and even when they were not married but only partners,
as it often happens in this generation,
and even in the former days when he was a single man who had who had an in-living woman, housekeeper,
right,
for 30 years. And one by one, we got a law that said that she was the reason that he could go on and work and earn money. So this should be divided half. Yeah. But that was a very long battle.
But it's still loopholes.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
But then you have to come. Yeah.
Because there is also a law that if you get married, you can have your partner sign this paper that I bring this into the marriage. So if you are the owner of the house, you can say on the paper that I'm the owner of the house. And when you get divorced 20 years later, you can take the whole house. And the women only gets
the furniture.
the furniture, yeah, and the silverware.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Because it all goes back to economics every time, right?
it does,
Yeah.
and I think that the economics is extremely interesting field that the research done there, also social economics, who has most who are the rich people in Norway, they are where the women, how much money do they
Mhm.
the statistic for that
And
is
when
a opener.
yeah.
So
And
yes.
when everything is changing, you get more private companies. Then you have to do the you have to argument for your salary yourself, you know. And then I think it's very interesting with some research, because I work as a film editor, and I have to argument for my wage every time I go on a project. Like 3 times a year, I have to say, yes, I should earn this, or yeah. And I just read a paper that said that women are less paid in private sector. We know that. And then all the women are told, you have to be stronger when you negotiate. And then the researchers pointed out that women are quite strong when they negotiate, but they
Still don't get
the same as men.
Yeah.
So when I negotiate for the last 4 or 5 years, I said I want the same as the last man who worked here. And we have a laugh, and I get the same as the last man who worked there.
Yeah.
And that's much more than I had previous.
But that what you said, that she has to be strong when she negotiates, so, and she was strong, but she didn't get. That puts the blame on her.
Exactly.
She wasn't strong enough. It's like the same that when we should avoid being raped, you have to create borders. You have to set up grenser.
Yes.
Put the responsibility on women. Yeah. So that we have to
Again,
turn it around.
Back to the individualistic, very personal, neoliberal sphere of thought.
Yeah.
So it's not the system, it's not the structure, it's us as individuals who can navigate the world in a way that makes us more or less protected. And we are always catching up.
Yeah.
But what is important is that we are talking about organization, and that is important. But the real heroes during this time, they haven't been organized. They have been so individually, they have been so angry, they have spoken out. We have, for example, some years ago, a young girl, 18 years, she was gang raped on the ski resorts by 3 or 5 men, and she didn't keep track. So, and then, I mean, the courage that she took to go public, a court case, and even lose the court case. And in the end, after that, they sued her for blaming them, etc. You know, but it was that was an organizing force. And I would say that it is not the organ. It's not the. We could help. We could mobilize, but it is the individual woman, young or old, who are so angry that make the big changes in our movement, in our way of. They tell us what we didn't know. They put here this is unjust. Yeah. So we are not sort of organized. Everything has to be in the organization. We without these individual
Spontaneous movement.
We hadn't been here. No.
Yeah.
But you can never like you can't imagine it's going to happen as an organizer. You can only be there to support it when it does.
Exactly.
That is our role in those spaces.
And
to support it, to allow for it.
Yeah.
I think perhaps the environment is a little bit, I wouldn't say easier in these media days to come forward. On the contrary, but some more people speak out. Think about Me Too.
Yeah.
Think about Me Too. Individual who really was sort of losing all credibility.
Yeah.
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 But yeah.
So I was just taking the sound out.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting when you mention what is our role as organizations to mediate this kind of spontaneous movements of women and of the feminist movement, as it obviously the feminist movement is so much more than organizations. It is all of us who move within it. And I was just wondering now, looking at the setbacks and the backlash on questions like abortion rights, but even when you mentioned your concern with the pornography sector, would you say that that is your big priority right now? So looking at the next 5 years of Queen Fronten's work, do you have a specific agenda that you want to work on?
The same as we started out with.
Because the challenge
in
is still
addition,
there.
all the other things I would mention, for example, pension.
Yeah.
Pension for women. We didn't have that on the day one. That was kindergarten.
Yeah.
But pension for women from day one when you are working, even with a small 10% job, now you shall earn pension points.
There is a struggle at the moment in
That
Norway.
we
There is
have
something.
achieved now. We have achieved pension points.
Because the last time I was in Geneva, there was this big protest because of women who worked at home, so they didn't contribute with taxes, and so their pensions were incredibly small.
Exactly.
And now there's a big movement around that as well.
Yeah.
I see that as being a very important point in our future actions, as it is a reality for a lot of women who are now getting old and realizing they've worked their whole lives, but not within the formal market. And what does that mean for the social system?
I think they have like a very small amount.
Like
No, but
patronized,
pension is
standardized.
very important for women.
Yeah.
And will be more and more.
As we know, elderly women are more than elderly men. They're usually lonely and they live alone, and that definitely represents the challenges for our social systems.
But I just want to, because you asked what we are planning ahead, but I just want to say that for the last years we've been better in celebrating things we achieve.
Celebrating, yes.
Yeah. And I think that's very important for all kinds of feminists and all kinds of organizations to celebrate what you achieve. You just stop up every half year and say, what did we achieve this? How can we celebrate this? And we do that in different ways. But I think even having a good conference or having a huge demonstration is worth celebrating. And you can also do other things like celebrating the abortion law.
Yeah.
We had what was it, 30 years?
25. 35 years, 78.
Yeah.
Difficult.
I remember
35 years.
We were celebrating
so
it.
much longer than us.
Yeah, we were celebrating it with the balloons and stuff, and it was very unpopular, and it sparked a huge debate, and that was,
of course,
very, very good to have that debate, because people were blaming us for celebrating abortion.
Of course, yeah,
killing of children.
Yes, killing of children.
You are celebrating tombs of little children.
Yes, of course, because we definitely see the backlash in that particular.
Yes, but I think it's important not to focus on backlash. I think it's important to tell yourself what do we want? What kind of goals do we have? I think I see pornography as like a 20 years perspective. I believe in change. I think that's very important to keep yourself up. And if you dig into pornography, it's like a black hole, you know?
Yes.
Because we all know this, that 8-year-olds watch pornography. In Norway, we have all this kind of media Medietilsynet.
Media Institute.
Yeah, we have
Media police.
reports from media institutes that tell us that 50% of every child in Norway has watched pornography before the age of 10. And, you know, that's long before they even
know what I see.
know what that is, you know. They sit and
Yes.
watch things.
Dinosaurs,
No,
I think
yeah.
they think.
I don't know. And you know, when they ask them, did you like what you saw? They all respond, no,
No.
because they don't like it, because
No.
they don't know what it is, and they don't have the means to
Grasp it.
comprehend what they saw. But and we know that, what is it? Every third site on the internet is a pornography site, and if you start going to that, it's just like a black hole. So I think little steps at a time, know what you want to achieve. It's very important for me. And I think for a lot of other feminists that I work with.
Yeah, I really like what you said about taking the time to appreciate and celebrate the things we've achieved, because we're often so angry. Like
Yes.
Agnes said, we are
Yeah.
often so angry,
And
and
we
I do
have-
believe rage is important.
Yes, rage is very important, and we have good reasons to be angry. So I embrace the anger. I'm a very angry person. So-
Very angry women.
Yes, because you see this the injustice everywhere, you know, and that's why I think a lot of women enter the women's organizations later, because you really see it when you start working and when you have
Yes.
kids. Then everything just blows up in your face
Yes.
with the burden and what happens at the
And
workplace.
you are tired.
And you're tired, so you get angry on everyone and everything.
So before opening up, space for debate and for the questions, I would just like to make one last point, obviously, because you've mentioned it, and I think it's so important with everything that's going on in the world now, looking at Palestine and Ukraine, just the challenges we keep facing. It always comes back to this internationalist feminist struggle is where you started with, when you mention all the
Yes.
places you've been. And even you being here today and the cooperations that we've tried to establish with Kvinnfront, and it really brings us back to the knowledge that we cannot win alone. And so much of what we face is what another woman and another girl is facing in the other side of the world. And that continues to be very important for you.
Yes.
I would imagine.
Yes.
And
Yes.
networking,
Yeah.
networking with other organizations in Norway, and networking international with other organizations as we are here. It's like we learn so much, because there are different ways of doing things. There are you have a topic that we haven't thought of. You have leaflets and studies that we would like to copy. We want to have
You have
and
data,
your
you have
victories
arguments.
also
Yeah.
makes us proud.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, that is
You gain a lot of strength for the battles you've managed to win, and other feminists have managed to win in other places of the world.
Every now and then, I think it's quite important to talk to feminists in Iceland, because they have all this crazy. In Iceland, they have a lot of funny ideas for activism. So I always think it's very nice talking to them. But for me, I've learned everything about argumentation about the sex trade from people I met within Kvinnefronten, of course, but also survivors. If I didn't travel and go international, I would have never met them.
Yes.
And it's very important to have first-hand information and understand their anger, and to debate with other women in all kinds of other countries. It's very important, because sometimes you come up with argumentation that is quite good, and you have to spread it and
Yes. Thank you, Hild, Agnete, as always, for your incredibly rich sharing. It has been a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be present at your celebration last year in Oslo as well. It was beautiful, very motivating day. It's always very motivating to be surrounded by so compromised, so dedicated radical feminists. So I will now open it for debate. If you guys here at the audience want to ask a question, please do feel free to do so, and in the live stream as well. So if you want to ask any questions, just please write any down in the chat maybe, because I believe the sound here could be a bit trickery. And I will read it out loud and direct your questions. If you do not have any questions, that is quite as well, quite all right as well. Teresa, we have a question here at the audience.
Thank you so much for this chat. Was for me, I have learned a lot of stuff. And one thing I have learned is that the breadwinner model is not so old in the Nordic countries. I thought it was like in England. That was the 19th model, 19th century model. Here in Portugal, it was introduced more, not in some discourses of the elites. Elite,
high elite, so upper class,
elite,
yes.
Elite, yes. Because that began in the parliament at the end of the 19th century, but in reality, it was a work of the 40s and 50s of the 19th century here in Portugal, and I think in the south of Europe. So we are very away from the British model that was began at the beginning of the 19th century. So we have also our grandmothers who worked, and it was the generation after that was catch by So well, that is very interesting because I didn't know a lot. I didn't know a lot about the Nordic countries and this model. Anyway, what I was curious to understand is how you worked with the unions, the workers' unions, because I think in Portugal the feminist movement within the unions is hard. It has been hard. So. Obviously you have feminists in the unions, but the unions always put the economic issues before the equality, the issues. So I was curious to know, how did you work so close with the unions?
Okay, we were we were working women, and as working women with a conscience, we were member of the trade unions, the nurses trade union, the professor, the educators in college and all sorts of schools. They were in those trade unions. I were in the public administration trade union, etc., etc. Okay. And also, you are right, there were economic issues, the salary and the working condition, that was the main topics for the trade unions. And everything apart from that was private. That was don't come here and bother us with that. But when it comes to the issue of about the Nordic model, we were in Women's Front. We were trained to start a discussion without being sure of winning. We lost and lost and lost the whole time. but it is a sort of communication with the other members. They have to open their ears to these topics that they didn't want to hear about, but perhaps touched them, perhaps thought about it afterwards. So trade unions is a very, very important arena for public speech. And in the end, you win them around in the female-dominated trade unions. And also, I remember when my trade unions was a completely, the leader here, because the law about sexual harassment in the workplace. She said, she denied it completely. Doesn't exist. Her members could tell her sexual harassment exists. That was that topic that sort of brought down the wall. Only economic topics is to be discussed. Sexual harassment was the topic that opened the door for all those other private so-called topics to be of great concern for the members of the union, and they wanted the union to take a stand. So thank you, sexual harassment. Yes, and we have we are going to talk about that tomorrow later today when we meet the trade from the trade unions. But if you are not being there, we can just give you a little a short story here, because we have always been working with the trade unions where we ourselves are members, and we managed to make them a yearly a conference every year. Also in my town, but especially in Oslo, they have been doing it for 20 years now, where the different female-dominated mostly trade unions come together and listen to topics that they not normally listen to.
Yeah.
And but going on for 21 years, and we can show you the agenda. They will have it this weekend in Oslo, and so this is the most important sort of going together, being to know each other. And when it comes to the equality model, it was the trade union that made the shift. Because the leader of the big trade union, I mean the one for all the trade unions in Norway, was a woman now also, who has the same opinion, and she spoke the 1st of March on the rally and saying we have to have the Nordic model, the equality model, and that made the Social Democrat Party shift, because they saw that we have all the trade unions are behind this equality model, and the leader now, Peggy. She is also a supporter and for the Nordic model, and we have started to have a very close relation, Women's Front and those in charge in the trade union, in that trade union. That is to make sure that they speak out when the time comes, and it is important. Yeah.
Hi, I would like to know, so your front, I can't say it in Norwegish. How do you say it in Norwegish?
Women's Front,
But in-
Kvinnefronten.
Kvinnefront
Kvinnefronten.
is now 50 years long. How is your relation, or if there are your links to the nowadays organizations and associations and collectives of young women, of feminist young women, which are more digital, more organic, not so organized in a formal association? How do you connect? How do you link with these younger generations of feminist youngsters, and with more different kinds of involvement in politics? I would like to know if.
Okay. We outsource it to younger members. We are on Snap. We are on Instagram. We are, of course, Facebook, but that's like from 40 years and up, isn't it?
Not for youngsters, I was
It's not for youngsters, but we are not on all kinds of for us, of course. But I can see that when we arrange, like we have something called a female historian night. Yeah. Where we do all kinds of different actions. That's very popular for young people. And it's very all kinds of different things. But one of the things they do is that they walk around in the street and they find a street with a male name, and they just stick a poster on top of it with a female historian name instead of it. And
one of our four mothers.
Yes, they just walk around all night and just so when everyone wakes up in the day after, all the streets have female names. It's like a small thing, but younger people like those kind of action, and it doesn't really fit me as well anymore because I have kids and they've been little for a long time. I can't wander around during the night. And also when you have a panel discussion, we have concerts, we have culture is very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exhibitions and cultural events is very important for young people.
Do you have the feminist collage movement in Norway? So it's I believe it started in France, and then it happens in a lot of places in Europe, which is when you write just names of women who have been killed, you write them in a piece of paper and then you put it in the walls. I think it's a very
it is done regularly, but we had one Women's Front in Bergen had one 8th of March, so during the 16 campaigns, we in the main plaza in Bergen, we put up candles like that for all the rapes that had been done during the year in our city.
Yeah.
That can be done easily.
Yeah.
And that was very,
I think there's a very interest for my generation in particular, in a way that I think is very powerful, is to take up the streets, so take up the public space, perhaps in different, more performative ways.
Yeah.
It often gets a bad rap, the performative name, but I think there's some things that you can do that really help on the awareness raising perspective.
And of course, there are topics that are not as important for young feminists, such as pension, equal pay, because they haven't really started working yet, kindergarten politics, and all kinds of family politics is not. So if you have a panel discussion about having a 6-hour workday, you won't see many teenagers and people in their 20s. So, but when you talk about sexual and reproductive health, so you have to discuss with young people what kind of topics, what drives you mad, what makes you rage. That's what we do a lot. We talk with young women and ask them. So maybe it's sexual harassment, maybe it's sexual harassment in school and universities.
Definitely. It was a big, it's a big topic here as well for young feminists.
And then maybe you should arrange a debate in the university in your town or in high schools. So
and it opens the door for a whole other for you to get into the other topics and also and to understand how all these struggles are connected and come from the same place of disadvantage.
But in my opinion, a lot of young people, we talk about young people being very fragmented and not being able to read longer texts. you know, but in my experience, I see young people watching long movies and reading books, and because they want to be informed.
Yeah.
They don't really want all those
Yeah.
short things. So if it's just something that touches them in a way, they read it and they watch a 2.5 long documentary about the topic.
Yes, I have the same experience. It's very easy just to stupidify
Yes.
every young person and
Yeah.
think we're all the same.
We
And also
don't-
just that there's some thing about young people that they shouldn't be quite as involved or quite as smart, when we know that this younger generation is deeply involved in social justice movements
Yeah.
in general.
yeah.
So does anyone have another question, both here obviously, but also in the live stream? We're almost at the time we had planned on ending the event, so if no one has any questions. Oh yes, Teresa. Another Teresa.
Just a curiosity. Is there in Norway a real queer pressure to eliminate in language the terms of men and women? Because in Portugal, we are in the last 3 years, we are seeing in public spaces some people that defend that, because there are some people that don't see themselves as men or women, so we should eliminate from language the word man and mainly the word women. And how can we continue fighting against inequality with this position?
Yeah. I've been actually talking to a lot of queer, lesbian, gay organizations about that topic. And I think the best argument so far is that you need the distinction hetero, homo. You need the distinction trans, cis. Then we need the distinction man, women. And then you can put everything you want in the bag of men and everything you want in the bag of women. But if you neutralize men and women, women are getting invisible. So that's our stand. And we can see the same, but I think in the majority of the population, that's a very unpopular thing to do. And there has been a rage recent years for the lack of maternity wards. And I think, and they are not feminists, they are very concerned about the maternity care. I think if you told them to rule out the word women, they would be furious. So I think common people don't think that makes sense at all. So I think it's a very weak case. And when I discuss it with trans women, for example, they really understand what I mean when I tell them that you have to make the distinction to tell me that I'm cis and you are a trans woman. Why do you need that? And it's to emphasize that their vulnerability, and that's what we need as well. We need to have statistics and data on how we get less paid, and women are getting more sexually harassed, and women are otherwise everything would fall apart. It would be invisible, the difference between men and women.
We have often been accused of, when we say something like what you have been saying now,
Yes.
that we represent the majority that that are sort of suppressing a minority's stand. And then we can say to ourselves, oh, that minority want to dictate the majority, but we think that, okay? We as a majority, there are so many issues that we have to learn to deal with. So we don't become racist, for example. We have, I will give an example from Norway that you can look into. And it is something I vaguely knew when I grew up because of my family. I heard about it. But the fact is, we have 3 national minority in Norway. 3. The biggest one is the Sami people, and then we have, I don't know the English name, Kven and Skogfinner. The last 2 groups were only recognized, let's say, 2 years ago. 2 years. Yeah. And they have been persecuted by the society. Children taken away, into internet, to school far away to learn Norwegian, not being able to learn their own language, or to be forbidden to use their own language. They had to hide it. There have been, let's say, 3 months ago, it came the Truth Commission came out with their findings. It was several thousand pages. And my sister is actually an expert in the Sami people's legal struggle. And I said to her, oh, can't you come over to Bergen and give us talk to us? There are Sami organization in Bergen. And then she said, the Sami people do not need this information. They know it. It is the society, majority society as such, that need that information. Meaning, in this case, Women's Front, you need it. Understand? And that is also the attitude we have to all minority. I will listen to you. I will understand you. I will correct what is the wrongdoing I unintentionally do, but you cannot become the majority. We are living together, all of us, in this. But it is very, very hard to say that Sami people at the moment, the Norwegian government is about to break their human rights. 2 years ago, the High Court, yes, Supreme you can say, I was present in a big demonstration last Wednesday and Thursday, a week ago, where the Sami people set up lavvos all over in Oslo city, made blockade of outside all the departments so the people couldn't come in and work, because they new energy, the green energy that we all need, has putting up wind power plants in the area where they are with the reindeer farmers. That is their land, their culture, and they had done it against, even if it illegally. Not all, but there are 71 plants that are illegal, and they were the High Court said that they have to be. This is illegal. This is a breach of the Sami people's human rights to fulfill the culture, to farm, to herd. And nothing has happened. Du har noe mer her nå, ikke sant?
Nothing happens.
Ja, og det er regjeringen og oljedepartementet. Disse,
Ja, det er
ja, så det er
jo
forferdelig grusomt, ja.
Ja.
Mm.
Yes.
So pay attention to that. Even a country, I mean, we will have perhaps other places that the green shift will violate minority people's culture, as the Norwegian oil companies are doing it in Latin America, in the Brazilian forest. Yes. Oh,
Yes.
it is. We are not proud of it, and we have to.
And I think some of the issues will solve themselves. Like in schools in Norway, they started with unisex restrooms. And now I just saw that the chief of education in my city said that is a failure, because girls, they don't go to the bathrooms in
To pee.
school anymore, because they are afraid to meet boys in the bathroom. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think some of the I think we can do both in a way. We can listen to the minority, and we can do some improvements, and we can talk to each other, but we can't change everything for the majority of people.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question or a comment to like? Yes, of course.
Jeg synes vi klarte den fint. Ja. Du ser ikke noen tanker der.
Hello. Thank you so much with every you say. I became a mother in 18-old. I was in my first graduation. It's for me, was very tough to make the graduation, because I'm a social service. I'm a graduation in social service, but the students was women, but I don't found support for the another girls, and institution is we don't have instructions to provide the place for stay the children when I studying. So if I didn't have a support family, is for sure we don't have the finish the first graduation. Now I'm the second graduations, and I have two daughters, and my older daughter stay in German and make the international relations. And for me, it's very important say to the both is you can do it everything you want. Don't see the men, women, I'm a woman. No, you can do it everything you want. It's for sure it's more complication. You make the more difficult, but you everything is everything you want it. And I'm like to asking for you, and in the institutions, university, and it's issue about the instructions for kids, for the mothers, student mothers. And the question is about these discussions or not.
Yeah.
Sorry for my English.
I think I understood, it's I know it's still difficult for young mothers to take a high level education, but now in Norway it's actually more women taking higher education than men. And that's, of course, a huge problem for the majority in Norway. So that's what everyone is discussing. What should we do with the boys? Why are they not taking higher education? You know, and it's been like that for ages. And now it's like 51% women, 49% men. So, but that's a huge problem. What will happen with men who goes to a psychiatrist, and it's impossible for him to find a man? And you know, every time I struggle not to say welcome to my world, but so the discussion is very much about that. I know young people have a hard time getting support when they are in education, and of course housing is much more expensive. So and the balance between education, work, and children is very hard. So it's still a struggle, but in Norway we have a very good support system for mothers who get children. But if you haven't been in continuous work before you get pregnant, it's more difficult. And there is also a very, very strange regulation that says that if the man hasn't worked himself and the woman hasn't worked, then he can't get paternity leave, and it's full paternity leave. So it's we are still working on that. Yes. Was that answer to your question? Yes. Okay, good.
So I have a message to read to you guys from Teresa. She's watching us in the live stream, and it says, "Dear partners in Kvinnfronten, it is really an honor for us younger women to listen to you and learn from your experience. We need to ensure that women's history is kept alive throughout generations of feminist women, and that we're able to regain the momentum of a strong feminist movement that centers women and girls in their real empowerment." Teresa, Youth Feminist Work.
Thank you, thank you. That was nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if no one has another question, perhaps we would end the conference here. We do have a big agenda in this next couple of days, as you know. So the breaks are important.
Yes.
Yes.
We have been looking at the agenda.
Yes. We work very hard. So I would just like to, well, first of all, thank you, a big thank you to Universidad Aberta, the Aberta University, who welcomed us here so kindly and who has been so tiring in making sure we have everything we need for this conference. In particular, obviously, to Teresa, who has really worked together to make this happen as well, and who has worked with me in this particular event quite closely. So thank you. And also, obviously, a big thanks to the to SEMRI, so the research group who has been here, also represented by Isabel Ventura, which was here in the panel, and obviously Rosana Albuquerque from the master's degree in women's studies that I'm very happy to also be attending, and also for receiving us here today. And a big thank you to you guys for being here and for agreeing to participate in this event as well, on top of everything else that we're going to be doing in the next couple of days, that we're so happy to have had, and that now we can we have we saved it, and I will be able to look back on
Okay,
it, and who
cool.
I believe shared such great notes and great rich history. And obviously a big thanks to everyone who welcomed us and accompanied us online as well, and for those of you who faced the rain to be here in person as well. So thank you, everyone.
Can you tell them the
Yes.
address?
So I'll write in the chat this address from the, maybe that's the camera. Yeah, from the, is that a research paper?
That's the address
Yeah.
for the where you get the file for this one.
Constitution research. Yeah. I'm gonna put this here so people can
research. Exactly.
Yeah.
Easy like that.
yeah, so you guys can look it up as well.
And
if you
it's
want.
free.
And it is free.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Muito obrigada a todos e a todas. Obrigada por estarem aqui.